I just wanted to quickly say that, yeah, there's obviously like a direction for a union for sure.
I was talking about a signal group for the push for the mobilization of this group. That's what was my suggestion, as a sort of like a not just emails or texting, but like actual group.
That's
Yeah.
a great suggestion. I'll note it down, Tyree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to respond, thanks for whoever asked for my opinion about it. It's interesting timing to ask about that because I just left some of the signal groups because I find it not very useful for the kind of stuff that we're doing. This group is like, kind of like relationship building, kind of having open discussion. I find the signal group a lot of typing, a lot of texting, a lot of having to scroll up to see what he said, all that kind of thing. It gives people this illusion that somehow they can just say whatever they want and nothing is 100%, secure in that kind of sense, that we just have to be open and be ourselves, but, be smart and mindful.
Yeah. I think it's a direction that definitely to form a type of union for disabled Canadians, for us to recognize, for the governments to recognize that yes, we are citizens. We are permanent residents. We are citizens of Canada, and we are taxpayers. They may say, "Oh no, you're not taxpayers." Every time you go to the grocery store, you pay tax. You pay tax everywhere. You pay tax. So yes, we are taxpayers. Some have paid into the taxation system. Maybe in their life they paid into it one way or another. Maybe they haven't. But regardless, exactly what Patricia. I mean, she echoes this all the time, and you're right, Patricia. You're right. People are they're taxpayers regardless, right? That's how the system needs to be. It needs to be made. C-22, yeah. I mean, well, I guess all we can do is hope what happens with it, right? Derb. In the meantime, that needs to get put in. However, how much is Derb going to be? Well, that's obviously a discussion. It can't be, and I'm not going to use that word poverty line because I know it just drives her batty when that word poverty level comes up. No more, no less, right? So
there's a reason, and I will talk about that in a minute. But I don't want to interrupt the train of thought.
No, exactly, because I mean, people with disabilities, they have different unique needs, what they need for their disability, right? So when people are at just a level, I mean, it was brought to my attention today. Well, what is the poverty? What is that level in Canada, like the taxation level? And I'm thinking, whoa. And actually, that was my next question I was going to throw at you there, Patricia, because I have to respond back to that person to ask that question today about what is the poverty level. I shook my head a whole bunch of time. I'm looking at it going, like I just like, are you serious? What is the poverty level of Canada? Well, every city in Canada, municipalities have their own freaking power. They have their own taxation levels. So the real level, I mean, Joseph, he just goes bananas on this every time people ask him, because he said the PBO report, he said it's all misconstrued so bad. There's no answer for it. You ask Carla Quantrill, she was asked about, well, what is the amount going to be? Well, we're looking at, we're between 19 to 25,000. Well, what? Why is it 19? Well, it's based on the GIS. What, you're saying that people, so it could be at $19,000 for, basically the GIS, the Guaranteed Income Supplement? Well, no, it'll be more than that. Okay, but not a concrete answer. So it's the same thing. Like it's saying, well, what's the poverty level? So it kind of, I kind of put two parallels with that. I'm going, uh-huh. So anyway, nothing said on that. Whenever you're ready, Patricia.
When you think of this word poverty line, or these words poverty line, what do you instantly think of?
For me personally, when I hear the poverty line, it means that nobody should be above or no less than poverty lines, meaning that people are treated. Actually, okay, let me reword this. Somewhat like that, but meaning that you are meant less in society than an able-bodied. And I say it's ableist situation. So yeah.
There you go. Okay. All right. Brent, you go for an ableist situation. Fair enough. You consider. All right. How about Dan? What do you think about? When you hear this term poverty line, what do you think about?
I'm not a big numbers guy, but I think like to say there's poverty, but to say the term poverty line, I just don't get it because like, for example, up until last month, I was making 733. And I bet if you ask every person in this room, you're going to get a different answer, right? So poverty line, I'm unsure.
Okay, you're probably right. I probably am going to get a different answer. And that's because when this term poverty line comes up, what we're really doing is we're talking about people. We're not talking about a number. See, we think in terms of poverty, we think in terms of people. And this happens all the time, and it doesn't matter where in the country you are. Because the poverty line, it really is talking, it expresses a brand of person. It is a very tidy phrase to clean up all of the isms and the phobias, misogyny, all of it. Okay? A perfect example of the kind of thing I'm talking about is the wage gap. Another example of the kind of thing I'm talking about is how people from the Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities have a much harder time applying or being qualified for mortgages or loans. Okay? These are prime examples of what the poverty line looks like. And so when we hear this term poverty line, we think to ourselves, oh, cost of living, no. No, that is not the poverty line. That is inflationary markers or metrics. Okay? We are not talking about the cost of living when we are talking about the poverty line, because the cost of living is different everywhere. But as soon as a politician starts yammering on to us about the poverty line, they really are just talking about us. Be it the fact that we are disabled, or the fact that we are Indigenous, or the fact that we are, whatever, okay? We're diagnosable, or we are racialized, or we are transgendered, or we are whatever, pick your thing. Okay, you're a refugee, you are facing addiction, you are homeless, you are whatever your thing is, or you're a combination. All of a sudden, you've got a thing, you match this tidy little definition, the poverty line. You're a woman, okay, because that counts. And now we have what is representative of the poverty line. And we've got poster kids sitting in the house. How do we know? Because there's Carla Cointreau with her really bad haircut and her glasses, just to make sure that we have a clear indicator that she is absolutely for sure disabled. How do we know? Because she can't brush her hair. Okay? So, we have these little, Easter eggs before us. This is baloney, okay? Everybody is able to see perfectly clearly that this is all baloney. They are not interested in giving us real money, because if they were, they wouldn't be offering to top up provincial standard living. How hard is it, anybody here in Ontario, to get on to ODSP? How much work did you have to do in order to do that?
7 years,
Right.
community lawyer, etc.
Bingo. All right. It took you forever. It was an incredibly taxing intake process. Okay. You had so much work you had to do in order to do it. And not only that, but you had to remain super, super poor and depressed in order to stay on it.
And do it again every so many years, right? I have to get a lawyer and do the whole court case again to prove that I need to stay on it. It's not done. I have to revisit it.
Yeah. So, as long as you're food insecure, really poor, and, lacking all will and grace to face your life, then maybe you get to stay on ODSP. And if you get to stay on ODSP, then luckily the Canada Disability Benefit will knock you up a few $1,000s every year. Well, goody for us. No, fuck them. They can't do this to us anymore. That's not what this is supposed to be about. We have to have an equitable society which says now we all get to have a modest living. Now,
Yay!
well, for sure. Now, to say something like the poverty line is, a vast sum, that would absolutely affect inflation. No questions asked. Why? Because there is something called demand pull inflation. And demand pull inflation suggests that if the government shoves into the hands of every single person all the money, that businesses will absolutely make a sales price from $5.99 to $25.99. Okay? We don't want to do that. That's a dumb thing to do. We shouldn't do that. But if we all have enough money, that makes a standard issue way of living. Plus, we cap things like rent in especially, crowded urbanized areas. And we have a healthy public transport system. And we have reliable social services so that when we are people with disabilities, or when we are people in marginalized communities, or when we are parents with tons of kids, that all of a sudden we aren't punishing each other, or when we are old, which, by the way, we all should get to be that one day. That shouldn't be something that we are punished for. Okay? What happens? We get to live a nice life. We get to be comfortable. Why? Because we have paid into these public services, because we are taxpayers. And to be a taxpayer is a good thing. We should be allowed to be taxpayers. And people who should be paying for it are the people who are not. See, we don't have defined wealth tax brackets. That's why I'm always going on about this. And I know how boring it is to listen to. I'm very sorry about that. But it's why I say it. Because if you guys are bored with it, then you guys will say it too. And that is what this is about. So, end of rant.
Well, that was
Thank you
well
for the
said.
TED Talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. That was, TED Talk. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you for my TED. Yes.
But very informative. Yeah, I always enjoy the informative views of that, because it really puts into perspective of the mathematical ways of looking at things. Like, people will hear poverty level, and I'm not going to say there's certain names, but yeah, like, there's different ways of looking at it, of saying, okay, give people the potential of as much income as they need. They can, if they bonus from more, hey, great. I mean, is there supposed to be a lid on to how much a person really needs in their life? I mean, God forbid they can go and enjoy their life. I mean, maybe they want to travel somewhere. I mean, nothing extravagant.
Have hopes and dreams,
Yeah.
and think about taking up a new hobby, think about picking up an instrument, and
Yeah.
studying, I mean, you need materials for art, or personal care items, like
Yeah, and that's the thing, Bertie. Like, it drives me crazy when I hear politicians talk about Cointreau, just for instance, right? I'll throw it out there. Well, a job, I mean, the best thing for a disabled person is a job, because that's what it is. That's what basically makes how the economy works. Really? Been there, done that. Yeah, like, gee.